In this video, I'm going to show you every single piece of kit I use working as a full-time video editor, as well as all the extra things I use to make these YouTube videos. Now, right off the bat, I want to point out a couple of things. I've been working as an editor for more than 20 years. I've worked here at Visual+Aid Productions for approaching 8 of those, and I've slowly been building this collection of editing gear over time. So you do not need all of this stuff if you're just getting started. So don't feel like you need to drop thousands of dollars just right off the bat. Secondly, there are definitely a few compromises in this room. You can spend absolutely stupid amounts of money setting up an edit suite, or a YouTube studio for that matter. And we've got 3 other edit suites, plus all of our production gear to pay for, so we definitely don't have unlimited funds to play with. I'll be sure to point out all the places I'd love to splurge if the budget ever allows. Let's start with a desk. It's easy to spend hours not moving doing this job, so we all have sit-stand desks. This one is from Artlist, 80 inches by 30 inches, and has 4 memory banks so you can save the heights you always use. I've had this thing for years. It's easily able to support all the stuff I've got on it, and it's never really given me any issues. The only thing I will point out is that when it's standing tall, it can have a little bit of a wobble if I'm leaning against it, but that might be because this is a 2-leg version, so there's a chance if I found a 4-leg version of it, it would work a bit better. Now for the chair, I've been wanting to upgrade recently because I wanted something that's got a little bit more support for my shoulders and my neck in particular. I've got pretty crappy posture. I have a tendency to kind of lean forward when I'm working, and so I was hoping that if I find something that supports my entire upper body, it would help encourage me to correct that. Now, luckily, the folks at FlexiSpot reached out recently, and they were kind enough to send me their C7 Morpher. There are several different parts I can adjust to fit my whole upper body. There's what they call the 3D headrest, which is really wide and can be tilted to the perfect angle and raised up and down. Then you have the Flex Lean upper back support, which can tilt forward up to 10 degrees. That should help keep my shoulders relaxed and my upper back supported. The Flex Slide backrest glides with you, keeping the spine supported as I reposition myself during the day. The Air Lumbar Support Tech can be inflated to adjust its pressure on your back, and its angle can be adjusted as well. I can adjust the seat depth a few inches back or forth to better fit my leg length. It features the next-gen upgraded hybrid mesh-addressed cushion material, which apparently provides 30% more breathability and reduces hip pressure by 20%. I can fully adjust these armrests 360 degrees to pretty much any position I want to help support my arms when I'm typing, and they adjust synchronously, so they recline with me however far back I lean, which can be really far back with this thing. The lumbar support also moves along with my back as I recline, so my back will be perfectly supported the whole time. You can even get a version with a footrest, but I don't really have time for naps at my desk. All in all, it's extremely adjustable and very comfy. It certainly isn't the cheapest chair in the world, but you can use my code down in the description to make sure you're getting the best price available. Plus they have a 30-day return policy for a risk-free trial and a 10-year warranty with direct replacements for damaged parts. If it's still a bit out of your price range, there are other more affordable options like the C7 or C5, which also have got some basic adjustments you can make. Thanks again to FlexiSpot for hooking me up. Now let's move on to all the bits of kit on my desk. The brains behind the edit suite is the Mac Studio. I got this back in 2022. It's got a 20-core Apple M1 Ultra chip with a 48-core GPU and 64 gig of RAM. It's got lots of different ports, which I use pretty much all of, so no need for a dock or a hub. It's been a super solid computer since day one. Resolve will certainly use as much power as you can throw at it for things like noise reduction or any heavy fusion work, so I might think about upgrading it if the new version comes out next year. All of our footage is stored on a QNAP in the closet down the hall, and all of the computers in the office are hardwired into that via 10 gigabit Ethernet ports we've got in the walls that are connected to a 10 gigabit switch in the closet. Now, the other thing that's connected to that switch is a little Mac Mini that stores all of the Resolve network libraries, so any editor is able to open any job in any workstation. I've never been a big mechanical keyboard person, so I'm still using the full-size standard Mac wireless keyboard. Whatever keyboard you use, one thing I would highly recommend is if you've got the room, try to get a full-size one with the number pad on the end. It makes typing number values like time codes way easier. One Apple device I can't stand is the Magic Mouse. Actually, 2 things, because I don't like the trackpad either. I had some wrist issues a few years back, so I wanted to switch to something that was more ergonomic and kept my wrists at a more natural position rather than flat like that. I've got some friends who swear by using a tablet and a pen, but I find that difficult to use with a dual monitor setup. And unlike every other desk setup video you're going to see on YouTube, I didn't go with the MX Master Mouse. I actually ended up with this mouse from ProtoArch. It's crazy cheap for a Bluetooth mouse. It feels really comfortable, the battery life is great, and even if it does run out of juice, the USB connection for charging it is right here on the front, so I can continue to use it while it charges. And yes, I'm looking at you, Apple. What were you thinking? On the other side, I've got a Contour Design Shuttle Pro V2. It's a really cool controller. All the buttons are completely customizable, and it's got 2 scroll wheels. The outer one for high-speed shuttling through the footage, and the inner one for frame-by-frame scrolling. I use it a lot when I'm doing rough cuts or pulling selects. I just wish they'd make a wireless version. For my main monitor, I'm using the BenQ PD3220U, which is a 32-inch matte screen. Been using this since 2019, I think. They've got a new model called the PD3226G, which comes slightly more color accurate out of the box. I've had my eye on the Asus ProArt Display PA32UCX-PK to replace this if it ever starts to fail, or if my boss is feeling generous. Now, if you saw some of my early videos when I started this channel back in April, you would have seen me using two of these side by side, but that was never the most comfortable setup since I was always having to slightly twist over to one side. With that being said, I really do like having a second monitor for things like notes or putting up my video scopes. So when I've got one of the monitors front and center, I didn't really have room for a second one that's 32 inches off to the side. And one of the other editors has been using two 27-inch monitors with one set up vertically, so I took a leaf out of his book and I traded him one of my BenQ monitors for this 27-inch LG Ultrafine. This was the monitor Apple used to sell on their website a few years back before they started selling the Studio Display and the Pro Display. It's attached to a monitor arm from somewhere. I stole this from his desk and he's gone home, so I have no idea where it's from. If I figure it out, I'm going to put a link down below along with links to everything else I'm showing you in this video. Now, when you're down there, please be sure to hit that like button because it really does go a long way to helping other people find this video, and it would mean the world to me as well. One thing you should get no matter the monitor is a colorimeter so you can calibrate your screens. Now, we use the Calibrite Display Pro HL, and we run calibrations on these monitors every few weeks. The main monitor is sitting on this cheap desk shelf I found on Amazon, mostly to make room for the two bits of kit I've got underneath. On the left, I've got a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. It's connected by USB to the Mac, and it's sending audio out to a pair of JBL 305p Mark II 5-inch speakers. They normally come in black, so these white ones might be some kind of limited edition version, because I can't find them anywhere other than secondhand or open box on places like eBay or Reverb. They're sitting on some foam isolation pads to help dampen any vibrations, and also angle them so they're pointing directly at my ears. The Scarlett is also feeding my headphones, which are the Beyerdynamic DT770 Pros. These are the 80 ohms version, which requires an audio interface to get the best sound out of them. If you plug them straight into a headphone jack on your computer, it's going to sound pretty weak. There is a new version, the DT770 Pro X, and they're designed to work well plugged into anything. So if I was starting over, I'd probably go with those just in case I need to edit on the go with a laptop or something. And for those of you wondering about my headphone stand, that is a glass mannequin head I found in a random thrift shop for like $20 a few years ago. I think it's for displaying hats, maybe? I have no idea. I just thought it looked cool. The other thing I'm using the Scarlett for is to connect my microphone, which is actually just an old Shure SM57 I had lying around with a windscreen on it. It's got a Triton Audio FetHead Phantom inline preamp attached to give it a little power boost. It's mounted on a low profile arm that I can move out of the way when I don't need it. This was really supposed to be a temporary mic when I was first setting up the YouTube channel, but it seems to sound fine, so I'm probably going to leave it as it is for now. Next to the Scarlett, I've got Blackmagic Design Ultra Studio 4K Mini. Now that's sending a feed with a HDMI cable from the Mac Studio to the big monitor I've got above my desk, which is a 55-inch LG C1, which I've had for a few years. I think the latest model was a C5. The C series have been really good, affordable client monitors you'll see pop up in quite a lot of edit suites. And they can even be pretty damn good reference displays if you get them calibrated. You could hire someone to professionally calibrate it if you can find someone near you. You could do it yourself with software like Kalman Home for LG and get an appropriate colorimeter to go with it, but I'm pretty sure that software is Windows only. Now, alternatively, and I'm likely going to get yelled at by some of the professional colorists that show up in the comments for saying this, if you're in a pinch, these TVs come with something called Filmmaker mode. So turn that on and set the gamma to match the gamma you're sending from Resolve, and you're going to get a pretty usable image. If we were grading something for broadcast or the movies, I'd either hire a proper grading suite or I'd hire one of the wonderful colorists that we've got here in town to do it. I would love to have a Flanders Scientific 65-inch HDR monitor, but I don't have a spare 20-something grand to spend. What I did get from Flanders is some Medialight Mark II bias lights to go behind the TV and my desk to give some color-accurate dim bias lighting. I've also got the Blackmagic Design Micro Color Panel. I used to have the mini panel, the bigger one with the screens on the top, but after a few years of use, the ball on the right-hand side started to misbehave, and then the cost of shipping and repair was going to cost more than the micro itself. So honestly, it was taking up a ton of space on my desk, and I'm very much an editor first, so this seemed like the most sensible option. It is a bit of a dust magnet though, so I found a company that makes these covers for it. One upgrade I'm thinking about making, since there's a slot for it, is adding an iPad to the mix. I could use it with the Elgato app to make a giant stream deck, and I could send a feed to it from Resolve to see what the image looks like on another monitor. Other than that, I've got a MagSafe charger for my phone, an R2-D2 mug I found at a thrift store for my pens, and my glasses. I've got something called monovision, where one of my eyes is short-sighted and the other is long-sighted. I just don't wear them on camera, so I don't have to worry about the light glare on the lenses. As for the room itself, the walls are all double layered with drywall and insulated to help a bit with the sound coming from outside. Now, it's not perfect, but it has helped quite a lot. I don't have any windows to worry about, but I do have a skylight that's going to let some natural daylight into the room when I'm editing during the day. It's got a blackout blind I can pull across with a hand crank if I need to kill the light to do some grading. For the paint color, in an ideal world, it would be painted with Flanders Scientific GTI N5 spectrally flat paint, but we've got lots of edit suites to cover, and at $135 a gallon, that was going to get expensive very quickly. If you've spent any time in the YouTube comments of videos about color grading and Resolve, or maybe some of the Resolve groups on Facebook, you might have come across the name Jim Robinson. He's a colorist up in Canada, and he's been super helpful to the Resolve color community over the years. In one of those Facebook groups a while back, he posted this photo of a paint mix you can get made at Home Depot, so I grabbed a screenshot of it. Now, I don't know what most of these numbers mean, but we sent it to the building manager when they were prepping the office before we moved in, and they ran with it. Jim, if you're watching, thanks for all you do, and I hope you don't mind me posting this. When I moved into this room, it was just a big box with tall ceilings and lots of echo, so I had to do what I could to tame it. Scattered around the walls and corners are acoustic panels from GIK Acoustics. I have their starter kit, which has got 4 bass traps for the corners, 3 panels for the first reflection points around my desk, and another bass trap for the back wall. You can build your own acoustic panels using some wood, some cloth, and some wall insulation material, and there are a ton of tutorials on YouTube that you can follow. But honestly, I'm not that handy, and it would probably take me ages, and it wouldn't look very good. So I'm more than willing to pay a little bit more to have them pre-made. Adding some furniture to the room also goes a long way to help with sound. I've got a fairly thick rug from IKEA on the floor to help with reflections down there. The couch in the back of the room is going to help soak up some of the low end. And I've got this bookcase from Wayfair and a bunch of pictures on the wall that kind of break the wall up a little bit to help scatter the reflections around. Is this a perfectly treated room? Absolutely not, but it does strike a good balance between cost and results. Also, I'm not an audio engineer. If we were creating a 5:1 surround sound mix, I'd be taking this project to a full-time engineer in a professionally treated environment. Now, as for filming these YouTube videos, while we have a ton of amazing cameras and lighting gear here at the office, I didn't want to have to set things up every single time I want to film something, only then to have to tear it all down every time a shoot comes up. So this needed to be something I could leave set up, not be in the way of the day job that I'm doing 40 hours a week in here, and budget friendly because I'm still new at this, and it's going to be a long time before this channel is earning the company a ton of extra cash that I get to spend on toys. The camera is a Sony Alpha Z VE10 with a Sony 16mm f2.8 wide-angle lens. It's mounted directly to my desk, so I don't have to worry about tripod legs getting in the way. There's a dummy battery that's plugged into a power strip, so I don't have to worry about charging it either. It has a teleprompter from Elgato so I can read my scripts, and I've got a foot pedal I got from them as well to control it. I had tried using the voice activation mode where the script automatically moves along with my voice as I read it, but I found it to be really hit and miss. I'm not sure if it's because of my accent or how low I talk or something in my audio chain, but it was getting really frustrating to use, so now I just stomp on the foot pedal to stop and start. Also connected to the camera with a HDMI cable is a Blackmagic Design 7-inch video assist, and that's serving 2 functions. It's a monitor so I can check my framing and focus, and it's also the recorder. The one thing I hate about that camera is that the memory card access is on the bottom next to the battery, so I'd have to take the rig apart every single time I wanted to copy media off of that card. And there was a video assist going spare, so I snagged it, and it lives here pretty much full time unless there's a shoot that desperately needs it. I can record directly onto an SSD drive, and then plug that into my computer and just get editing. The key light is a cheap 80-watt LED daylight balance light from GVM that came with a softbox and a cheap light stand. It's definitely not the great stand in the world, but it also never gets moved, so I'm not too worried. The light can be controlled from an app on my phone, and it's plenty bright considering how close it is to my face. It's literally sitting at 1% right now, so if I crank it, you're going to see how bright this gets. Oh God. As for my other lights, there's a small LED light as a fill over in the corner attached to one of the acoustic panels with a Gorilla Pod. I've got a tube light from Nanlite that's attached with magnets to the door frame that I'm using as a rim light. There's this floating light bulb that I use as a practical on the bookcase. And in the back of the room is literally a floor lamp from my boss's house sitting on a small box with a daylight balanced light bulb inside, so the back of the room doesn't fall into complete darkness. Now, of course, there are some changes I would make if I had the money, but honestly, unless something truly game-changing for my job comes along, I have a tendency to just use things until they break rather than constantly upgrade things. It's a bit too easy to go crazy with all this gear, and sometimes the best thing for the job is the thing you've already got right in front of you. But is there a random piece of equipment that's made your job easier? Let me know in the comments down below. And while you're down there, be sure to hit the like button to help other people find this video, and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on Resolve tips and tricks like this. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.